The number one sales application is if you can do what you say in the sale, then you're going to have happy customers. And solar, as a relationship business, you need to make sure that you follow through with your word, because that word will carry on to different customers and you're going to have a larger net of opportunities for the future.
Now, you're also a father, you're a husband. People with families, they tend to do better in sales. How has that elevated your leadership?
I have to be better every day because I'm an example to them. And as an example, it's not so much what I'm saying, but it's my actions and what I do. And so the way that I treat them has taught me a lot about leadership.
Dude, your people love you. They will go to war for you. And I've seen that. What are some practical ways you've done that?
When you start pouring into people, you end up learning from them. It takes a lot longer when you're focused on yourself. When you focus on other people, you can develop a lot faster.
Yeah.
And so even when I've been really down or I haven't believed in myself, if I can try to help uplift someone else around me, it actually helps get me out of that rut a lot faster and sooner. And so you got to be able to do that in business.
Young leaders, you've mentored many. And so what's some great advice you give somebody that wants to step into your shoes?
First, you've got to make sure that you have.
Welcome to the VIP, the Valor Impact Podcast. My name is John Soriano. We believe that you can have it all, that you can be successful in all areas of your life, your faith, your family, your fitness, your finance, that you do not have to choose between one or the other. And as you listen in, take notes, take it all in, ask yourself, how can I apply this today? How can I go out there and execute today? Because we're going to teach you a wide range of things, from sales, from leadership, to finances, to mindset, to even how to have success in sales and in your marriage. And my only ask is that you like this video, you subscribe to it, you share it with somebody in the sales industry, and that you also ultimately go out there and execute on everything that you want.
Welcome to the Valor Impact Podcast. I am your host, John Soriano, and today we have someone that I've gotten to know really well over the last 2 years, Dane Vikander. He is the senior regional for the West Side region, one of the largest regions we have here at Legacy Power. Dane's been in the industry for over a decade and has just a wealth of wisdom to share with us in the door-to-door space. So, Dane, welcome to the podcast.
Dude, thank you for having me on here. When you asked me to do this, I literally have only seen these on YouTube and I've never actually done it. So I love that I'm here. I feel like there's some value that we can shed on people, and hope this is impact for everyone. But I appreciate you.
Yeah, dude, I appreciate you. This is Dane's first podcast, by the way. But you're going to find out that he's no stranger to being able to deliver wisdom and bars. So Dane, why don't you start with, dude, tell us your story, clearly, actually for the audience, if I can build you up a little bit more. Dane runs a region of, over 100 people, but he himself has trained hundreds and hundreds of the salespeople in the alarm space and the solar space. I mean, he's been in the industry for a while. He's been able to make multiple 6-7 figures combined, been able to provide a great lifestyle for him and his family. He's also, one thing I like about you, Dane, is that we're similar in the sense of you raise up your own people. I think often, at least in our industry, we have a lot of people who like to export their leaders, where you raise them up. You raise them from within. I mean, a lot of your people today have been with you for years and they'll follow you anywhere. So, dude, tell us a little bit about your background, your story, kind of how you got into door-to-door and all that.
Yeah. So I've been doing this since 2008. It's been a long journey.
Wow.
I was
still in high school, dude, in 2008.
Yeah.
I was a junior.
It's 17 years is a long time in the business.
Wow.
I saw one of my buddies come back and he had just had a successful summer selling alarms.
Mm-hmm.
And he drove up in a Porsche to our fraternity house. And I had to ask him what he did, because it was just unusual to see a 19-year-old kid driving in such a nice vehicle. And so he said that he went out and sold alarm systems. And I knew that if he could do it, I'm competitive naturally. I knew that I could go out and do something similar. And so I went out. That was my first summer in 2008. We went to Texas. I ended up working in alarms for 7 years after that, and really just developing sales skills and learning how to influence myself. And then I got into solar in 2015. I had previously met Doug and Luke, who I have tremendous respect for. And they were starting Legacy and they wanted to get out on the East Coast. And so I knew that there was an opportunity to go and help people and save money and help the environment, which Growing up, my mom is a little bit of a hippie, so I feel like it was the right thing to do. And also financially it made sense. And so I went out to Long Island, New York, and that's where my career in solar started.
Wow.
I've been able to, I built up some teams out there, and then we transitioned to California, and we started a team from scratch, and we built that up really quickly, and was able to work with a couple different companies out here as they kind of merged us and sold us into a different organization. But I'm really happy to be back at Legacy. It's been an amazing journey the last year and a half, and it's like we're on a great trajectory for this year. So
let's go. Dude, I want to actually dissect your story a little bit more. So you said you did 7 years in alarms, right? And now you've been in solar the last decade. And so what were some lessons that you learned in alarm? Because I've never done alarms, but from what I know, it's different, right? It's more quick, right? It's same days, it's fast paced. Where solar is more relational, it's longer, right? It's a more professional sell. You have to be more equipped. So what were some things you learned in the alarm space for 7 years that really helped you build your career now in solar?
Yeah, I think the first thing that I learned was it's the time that I spent on the field talking to people was going to give me my biggest return. And so I needed to make sure that I was spending a lot of time out there contacting as many people as I could. I mean, alarms is a lot more of a numbers game than it is like a relationship game. You still have to connect with people, but it's like, how many people can I actually talk to today will equate to a certain number. And my first summer, I just wanted to make sure that I always got one. So for me, that was like, I was jogging to 100 some doors a day to find that one customer that was interested in alarm with no sales skill. That was the easiest way for me to get involved and to be successful. And as I continued doing that, I started reading more. And so that was where I developed probably the most in that part of the alarm business, is just being able to read sales books and then apply the skills that I was reading into the doors, which made me more efficient on the doors. So I didn't have to jog as many doors, and I was able to get more out of each person.
Yeah.
But just like working the hours and finding people to connect with was like how I was able to find success. And that was able to translate into solar, because solar is, I think, more of a relationship, more professional. But in my opinion, every single person needs and wants to save money. Every person wants to be a positive for the environment and not a negative. And so solar makes so much sense. It's like, you've got to get more out of every person we talk to, because if we don't get it to them, someone else will. It's just a matter of time. And so I feel like we need to do our job and really be persistent, and also have good conversations with everyone we encounter out there. So
yeah, kind of what I'm hearing is you learn, working hard, and because in alarms you have to, but also working smart. Right. I think sometimes people lean on one or the other, but it's really both. I think if you can find that flow of working smart and hard, and you combine it, because, sales is not just a numbers game. It's also a people game and a skill game, and knowing how to talk to certain types of people. And so it kind of seems like that's what you learn. Now, you also said something in your story. You're like the story about your friend having a Porsche, like a 19 years old, you were like, you say, well, hey, I'm competitive. So like, what makes Dane Vikander competitive? Because I've seen you are competitive. Like you do everything you can to win, or give your best. And so what made Dane Vikander competitive? Because it sounds like you had that from day one.
I think sports definitely helped me with that. I grew up playing baseball. I probably started when I was like 3.5 years old, 4 years old, and I started playing baseball. And it wasn't something that I was passionate about until I started getting good at it when I was about 9. When I realized that I was actually pretty good at baseball, and then I became passionate as I started seeing my skills develop, and I started doing a lot better performance wise. I'm like, this is something that I really, really love. But it took me a few years. But it was actually in high school. I ended up getting in some trouble, and I actually ended up getting kicked off my baseball team my senior year of high school. And it was really like a tough moment for me. But I remember my coach, who put a lot of fuel into me, and he was kind of like, I've heard you've been in trouble in the past. I think you're going to be in a lot of trouble in the future. He's like, it's going to be a tough road for you. And it kind of left with me like this taste where it's like, I'm going to prove you wrong. And so I've always had kind of a chip on my shoulder. Like, I want to go and prove to people around me that I can go and compete, and I can go and dominate in the marketplace at whatever I'm doing. And on top of that, I want to help other people, or maybe underserved or underprivileged at the same time, because I think there's a lot of people that doubt us. and not as many people are uplifting. And so I wanted to always be that uplifter, but I couldn't do that without being competitive and being really good at things myself. So that's probably why I'm like deep down really competitive. I have a chip on my shoulder. That's
yeah.
it,
No, it sounds like you let some people let the past be the reason why they're a victim, and some people let the past be a reason why they choose to be a victor. And you chose to be like, no, I'm going to let my past not define me, but instead I'm going to use it as fuel for to make something of myself. Now, you're also a father, you're a husband, right? How have you seen? Like I've noticed one thing about people with families, they tend to do better in sales than people that don't have family. I just see this kind of correlation, right? And I think it's because, of course, they understand that, hey, if I don't sell something, like my kids don't eat, And so how have you noticed? Because you started in sales when you were single, you had no kids yet, right? You and Bree were dating at the time. Dr. Bree. You and Dr. Bree were dating at the time. Yes, Dane married a doctor.
Yeah.
And so how have you seen, how has being a father, like if you could speak to the people who have kids, right, and maybe are thinking about sales or they're in sales and they have kids, how have you seen being a father, being a husband, how has that elevated your salesmanship and also your leadership?
So what I've seen in sales is the more responsibility that you have, the more you're going to perform to that responsibility. So I think like step one is when you don't have a family and kids, don't live with your parents. Like it's okay for a time, but you need to get out and live on your own as quickly as you can. So you have responsibility because you're going to perform to that responsibility. When I didn't have kids and I was selling alarms, I always envisioned what my kids would be like. And I envisioned them kind of watching my day-to-day habits. So it kept me in check with myself and with our higher power that I needed to make sure that they would be proud of their dad, even though they didn't yet exist on this planet. They were in the waiting room of heaven. And so that kept me accountable before I had a family. And then now that I do, and I've got 3 beautiful kids who I absolutely adore, it's like I have to be better every day because I'm an example to them. And as an example, it's not so much what I'm saying, but it's my actions and what I do. And so the way that I treat them has taught me a lot about leadership. All of us are kids deep down, and we respond to the way that we were as children and as kids. And so every single day they're teaching me like the basics of life. You want to feel secure. You want to feel a culture. You want to be uplifted with people around you, encouraging. And you will see a lot of poor leaders kind of do the opposite stuff. And so I think having kids will amplify your leadership ability, and it's been a huge blessing in my life. And I know that it's like the more time that I spend with them, I'm actually become a better leader in business as well. So
I love that. I love the quote, when you take on more responsibility, you'll perform to the level of your responsibility. And I mean, it's when I look at my life, I'm like, okay, when I became a husband, I know I leveled up. Like when I was single, cool, I leveled up. When I was single and on my own and not with mom and dad, I leveled up. But then when I became married, I leveled up even more. And then when I became a father of 1, I leveled up even more. And then now a father of 2, and then I leveled up even more. And then it doesn't have to just be children. I love what you said, because over the last year, I know like my wife and I have taken on even more responsibility in our church. And now we're responsible for over like 100 people, like a whole 100 people volunteers. And that responsibility has leveled me up too. And so I love that, because I think there's something in us that is wired to want to serve and love people and help people. And I think that is one of the greatest fuels you can use to go be the best version of yourselves. Would you say like, is there other principles that you live by that's like that? Like I love that principle of like act like your future children are watching you, right? Or even if you have children, act like they're watching you all the time, And so like I've even noticed, I've been kind of getting into this media stuff the last year or two. And sometimes when I have cameras following me and watching me, I tend to notice I'm a little different when I know there's someone watching me. But then when you're by yourself and, it can be a little tempting to kind of like let it off. And so I love that principle of act like your children are watching you, right? Because then it forces you to be like, okay, I got to be the best version of myself. So all that to say, I mean, is there other principles that you live by that's like that have been profound in your success?
Yeah, I think, the way that we were brought up is we learned a lot of really good habits. Like my dad We had a good, middle-class childhood, but there was piece of him where he was like perfectionist. He would teach us a skill and then he'd have us complete the skill. And something that he always taught is you need to follow through. Like whatever you start, you need to finish. And so the job's not done until it's done. Like I'm not the starter that will just like start and then go to a different project. Like I always find a way to get the job done. So if I say I'm going to do something, I make sure to do it. I always deliver on my promises. And if I don't, that stuff haunts me and I don't want to be haunted. I don't want to have sleepless nights. Like I make sure to follow through with what I say. And so it's like, that's like a number one sales application is if you can do what you say in the sale, then you're going to have happy customers. And solar as a relationship business, you need to make sure that you follow through with your word because that word will carry on to different customers and more customers. And you're going to have a larger net of opportunities for the future. So I think that has always helped me, is just following through and doing what I say. The other thing that, growing up in a little bit of a tumultuous lifestyle with the way that my parents were, my dad, kind of being an alcoholic and my mom being an uplifting artist and they both had really good things, but there was drawbacks just as any of us grow up is, I got really good at a chaotic life and mastering my way through it and finding a way to find the good in things, even when things were dark and maybe difficult. And in sales, we deal with a lot of adversity. We deal with a lot of pain. There's a lot of rejection, more rejection than anything else I think that exists. And if you're really good at handling that and seeing the opportunity in the rejection and the opportunity in the chaos that happens with sales as we go through our ebbs and flows of business, that has really helped me get through a lot of the stuff where it's like when it's chaotic, I just don't feel it the same way. And as a leader, I think that's important because if people are looking at you and looking for your strength and you're not really fazed by hardship, which I know that you're actually really good at, John, is like you run towards the fire. That gives people strength where you're not going to have these big ebbs in a business. Like you're going to have flows and you're going to have upward trajectory a lot more often. And the down swings in business aren't going to be as long or as bad. So,
have you ever heard this? You said something reminded me. Have you ever heard of the why the word coward is where the terms coward stems from?
No.
So coward, there's cow, right? COW, and cows when they see a storm coming, they actually run away from the storm. But usually you can't outrun a storm. So actually, if you think about it, right, if this is the cow and this is the storm, the cow's running, the storm's going to eventually pick it up. And then as the storm catches up, it's actually going to stay in the storm longer. Yeah. Where you look at a bison, when they see the storm come in, or even like an eagle, they've actually been shown that they run towards the storm. Because if this is the storm and this is the bison or the eagle, whatever, right, they're coming this way and then they actually get through the storm faster. And so that's kind of where the term coward comes from, I guess, is because
makes sense.
Because cows, that's what they do. They run away, but they think that they're actually running away from it, but actually what they're doing is they're going to stay in the storm longer. And so that's why I know me and you are the same. And like, man, we embrace challenges. We're like, nope, let's run towards it because we're gonna have to go through it either way. Like you can't escape it. It's just deep, but I would rather stay in it as least as possible than as long as possible. Same. And so what are some practical ways? Because I've heard your story of upbringing. I also know your story, just, in door to door. And I've heard, and you don't go 17 years in this space without dealing with some kind of adversity. And so what are some practical ways that you can share on how you've dealt with adversity? How have you been that bison, that eagle that has just said, man, I'm going to go to that storm and I'm going to get through it as fast as possible?
So something that I've realized is everything is temporary. It's temporary. So the pain that we experience that might be really hard at the time, it feels like it might be never ending. But as you've gone through that more, you realize that it's all temporary. So I don't think you give it as much power over you when you realize that. Same thing when things are really, really good. You know that that's temporary and you can't expect that it's always going to be really, really good. So I'm preparing now for what could come next in the next 3 to 6 to 12 months where I know that it's going to change and we need to capitalize on when it's good. And that's how, sales business is. I mean, there's going to be cycles where it's like a huge upward swing and you know that it's never going to last that way. So it's like reminding people to put things away and to capitalize and take advantage of every opportunity they can, work extra hours, knowing that there is going to be a little bit of a change or something is going to adjust or correct. And now you're going to have a little bit of an ebb where now you need to deal with a little bit of hardship and some more adversity, and it's all going to be temporary. So it's just chapters in our life. And as I've done this for 18 years, I've seen so many different changes in sales business.
What would you say is one of the biggest changes that you've gone, or one of the biggest seasons of adversity that you've gone through? Like, what's the story and like what'd you do to overcome it?
Man, I think there's been a few. I mean, when I graduated college, I always thought that I would be doing something else in the financial sector. And
you have a degree?
Yeah.
In what?
In economics.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. University of Utah.
Cool. So I had no idea.
Literally has not helped me. But I always thought I'd be working in like a financial bank of some sort. And when I graduated and saw that the opportunity was actually better continuing on with my door-to-door career, and my freedom and flexibility and my lifestyle would be a lot better and more what I wanted. That was kind of hard, like just swallowing that pill, like everything I'd worked so hard for through schooling was actually kind of a lie. And I realized that we're in control of our destiny a lot more, and we didn't have to work up this long progression and this long ladder through a big business, but we could actually create our own progression path and create the ladder and then stepping stones for other people around us. And so that was difficult. When I got into solar, after doing sales for 7 years, I realized really quickly that alarms was different than solar. And I really needed to focus on the customer more than just like a numbers game. Right. And so my first day was really difficult, and I ended up breaking down that night. I had to like correct my brain and just focus on tomorrow. I'm going to work the hours. I'm going to have good conversations and try and build relationships with people. And, that next day in solar, I was able to go out on a snowy day in Long Island, New York, and have conversations from 9 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock at night. It was dark at about 4:30. And I remember getting 4 opportunities that day where I set appointments with people, and it gave me like a refreshed belief in myself that I could do anything.
Wow.
And it was just like a reminder that no, it's about the effort that we put in and the attitude that we have going into it that's going to really change and dictate our future. And so, I mean, that's just one of the difficult times. There's been a lot of really good times too. And so, but
it's those difficult times that make you enjoy the good times so much more.
Way more.
And I've discovered like a lot of at least young leaders, they think that when they're going through a difficult time, it's like, that's the time, I'm doing something wrong. And so I got to shift, and I got to go over here. I got to go over there. I got to go to this industry, this company. It's like, no, it's part of the process. Because once you go through it, and then finally, because life's not all up and up and up and up, right? Like really it looks like this, and then like this, and then like this, and like this. But then when you look at it over a decade, it does go up, but in the months by months, it's like,
you don't notice it.
You don't notice it. Yeah. And so, and to kind of shift gears a little bit, I want to get in some practicals, because one thing about you is that you're 17 years in the space, and you're currently right now on the doors still selling. Right. And, I love that, because I feel like most people, they'll do 5 years and they somehow think that they've graduated and that they don't need to anymore. But I love that you still are humble enough to be like, you know what? I'm going to go out there with my people. You know what? I'm going to go out there with my people. I'm going to show them that I'm willing to do what I'm asking them to do. And I love that about you. And so I just want to know, like, can you show me some practicals on like what you do on the doors? Like, I know, for example, Mike Brand, he's like notoriously known for like being the guy that gets in the home, right? And like, that's his thing. And he's been really good at like getting inside the home and building rapport inside. And, kind of what's your thing? I don't know. Is there something special that you do that's maybe unique to you and you only? I just want to kind of get through some practicals on what you do on the doors.
So, dude, that's a good question. I think right now I'm super hungry. I think that's like a big part. Like,
don't worry, dude, Chipotle's coming. So
yeah.
Oh, not that kind of hungry. Okay. We do have Chipotle coming in about 20 minutes.
So it's the best way to move the needle in our business is we got to be out in the field. And so that's one part. But one of the things that I think I've gotten really good at over the years is when I'm having conversations with people And especially when there's resistance at the door, a lot of times they're looking at me to give them security and to give them a reason that what I'm saying is true and that it actually is good for them. And I've been really good at making eye contact when I speak, especially when it's like they give me an objection like, oh, I just don't believe you, or I think solar's a scam. And I can look at them and be like, I understand why you say that. It's actually not. And this is why. And I will kind of break it down, but it's like, I feel like I can see a window into their soul, and there's this connection that happens where all of a sudden they're going to listen a little bit longer. And if I can get them to listen a little bit longer, I think they end up seeing that solar sells itself.
Yeah.
What it comes down to is you've got to connect with these people. And I've gotten really good at connecting with people. I mean, it's taken years. My first year at this, I couldn't connect with anyone. My second year, it was like just getting better at sales skills. But by the time I got into solar, and I my first day, and I had a tough day because I was trying to sell solar, I realized it's not about selling solar. It's about connecting to people and showing them the value of what we do, and really telling them that we can help serve their life and help serve their family in a better way. And that's what I've gotten good at. And so I feel like I have longer conversations because I can connect. I have longer conversations because I'm willing to listen to them.
Right.
And I'm not looking to get a pitch out.
Yeah.
Like, that's not my MO. It doesn't serve anyone if I'm just trying to pitch someone. I need to find someone that's going to listen for a sec, and then I need to get my point across, but I'm going to listen to what they need from me.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like you're saying, trust is the currency in business. And that's it. If you can find trust, and the truth is in our space, a lot of people don't trust door-to-door people. They don't trust salespeople in general, because I think we've been manipulated. We've been convinced to believe that salespeople, they're unethical, they are liars, and they pressure you. And unfortunately, there are those people. But that you can make great money, have a great career being a salesperson if you're honest, if you're integrous, if you tell the truth. And so it sounds like you have a great way of kind of bridging that gap and showing people like, hey, you can trust me. Because the truth is Jordan Belfort, I'm sure you've heard about the 3 10s, right? They need to love and trust your company, love and trust your product or service, and then they need to love and trust you. And, if you rate really low on any of those, they may not do business with you. But the most important one is you, right? Is like, because if they love your company, they believe in the product or service, but for some reason they're like, I don't know, there's something about that John guy. They won't do business with you.
Yeah.
And so I love that about you. And I know you, bro. You're so easy to trust. And I feel like the first day I met you, I was like, there's energy towards you. You know what I mean?
I feel the same way about you. So.
Thank you. Now, what about building a team? Because you're a dynamic leader. Not only are you a good salesperson, right? But you're also really good at raising up leaders. And like I mentioned earlier, you're good at raising from within. And I haven't seen that too often in the industry. I feel like there's a lot of people out there in the industry who are great salespeople, but very few I've seen that can do sales really well, but also they raise up their own leaders, right? They take a guy that was a waiter, an Uber driver, or maybe was sales in somewhere else, and then they raise them up to be like successful people organically. And so what are some practical ways that you've done that? Because, dude, your people love you. Your people, like, they will go to war for you. And I've seen that. And so like, what are some practical ways you've done that?
So I've had some really amazing leaders throughout the years, and the ones that have made the biggest impact in my life are the ones that have instilled belief into me and believed in me even when I didn't. And as I've seen this business, and I know my career path is like, I'm here to endure, and the longevity of solar, like, it's not going anywhere. I'm going to ride this thing until the wheels fall off. I'm willing to spend the time to develop people. It took me a long time to actually become a leader that I feel like I could influence myself first. It took me a long time to actually start helping and uplifting people around me. I've led for bad and I've led for good, and I know the difference. And it wasn't until about 8 years in where I could start bringing people up around me and actually pouring into them and teaching them and showing them the way. And so I'm willing to do, as long as it takes. There's leaders that have worked with me, Sergio Moreno, Nick Morgan. I mean, these guys have been with me for 8 years now. And when they first came into the business, they weren't great leaders, but they were learning how to influence themselves. But knowing what I saw in them and the belief that I have in them, I knew that over time I could help to instill that belief within them, and they continue to do the work. So a lot of it is on them. And that's why they're so good, is they were willing to put in the time and the effort, what it took. But they have become tremendous leaders because of the time I think we spent together. You know, the thing is, when you start pouring into people, you end up learning from them and you learn how to be a better leader. It's when you're focused on yourself, it's really hard. Like, you don't know how to develop quickly. Like, it takes a lot longer when you're focused on yourself. When you focus on other people, you can develop a lot faster.
Yeah.
And so even when I've been really down or I haven't believed in myself, if I can try to help uplift someone else around me, it actually helps get me out of that rut a lot faster and sooner. And so that's something, I mean, you've got to be able to do that in business. I mean, there's definitely not great days every day. Like, I've got a lot of tough days. I've had a lot of great days, but it's just being able to know that I can uplift someone around me, and that actually gets me out of that rut faster. Wow. So
something I've noticed that you do as well, I'm not sure if you caught this on, is that you'll do hard things with your people. So an example is, I know you guys have done many Spartan races together, and something that my mentor taught me years ago, he said, you know, John, men for the most part bond shoulder to shoulder. Women, they bond face to face. Right? That's why most women are wives. They want quality time, right? They want them to, like, for you to look them in their eyes, and right, because women, they bond face to face. Men, however, we don't bond necessarily like this. We bond shoulder to shoulder, meaning we got to go do stuff together. And so I've seen that you've done like Spartan races with your leaders, and I think there's something really amazing that happens when you guys collectively say, "Hey, we're gonna do something hard," and this type of bonding happens. That's really hard to separate, to where, you know, you look at one another and you're like, we just did that. We just did something really hard together. We just did something where I maybe wanted to quit, you wanted to quit, but we got through it together. And man, I feel like if people just understood that principle and they're like, hey, go do hard stuff with your people, whether it be within the industry, right? Like when NEM3 happened for us, hey, we endured some hardships, but you know what? That made us stronger, because now I can look at everybody and be like, guys, we got through that. Like, do you remember? Now we laugh about it. Do you remember when we thought that solar was dead 2 years ago?
It might be over.
Yeah, and now we laugh about it, but we're like, we did that. And I think, again, I go back to the whole hardship. People think you do that so well, because I see that you do it, not just in the industry, but you purposely are doing things like Spartan races. And I don't even know if you've done more things than that, but to me, it just seems like that you purposely do hard things with your people.
I think, you know, people, like, especially men, and I think there's a lot of women too, but we like to build things. Like, we like to build things and we like to see progression in things. And so when we do these Spartan races, it's like we'll get on these group texts and we fire each other up every single day, and we'll have like workout routines, we'll post them, and then we'll have these countdowns of when the Spartan race actually happens. And when we get out there, some of us are underprepared, some of us are overprepared, but we go and do it together. And
you're probably the overprepared guy, huh?
I try to compete. I want to win the race, so I push. But but we all uplift each other, because even the people that have been underprepared, they perform higher level because we're all doing it together. But we like to build things. We like to do hard things together, and I feel like it's our responsibility as the leader to be doing things outside of just work that other people inspire to be like. I think everyone has like a dream that they want to be physically fit. I think that's an important dream, and people have it. So what are little things we can do every day that they can go and achieve? So we did a push-up thing where we started off doing 50 push-ups a day. And we started in 2023 of August. And then we slowly worked our way up to 100 push-ups, up to 150 push-ups. We got up to 250 push-ups, and we did it for a year. There was like 4 or 5 of us that had done it for a year. And it started to wear us down a little bit. Like after that year, we're like, dude, we like, our joints kind of hurt. Like, this might not be a good thing, but we were constantly pushing for it. Like, no one wanted to be the one to quit. So it was like, after a while we had to come to an agreement where it's like, look, like, we got to do something else. But it's like that, I think that culture is like really good to have around. Like, even if it's a few of you, it's going to spread throughout the ranks, and it does uplift everyone. It uplifts the team. So
what's that quote by, I don't know, Socrates? Somebody, one of those philosophers, says that he's like, you know, what a shame for a man to grow old and never fully see what his body is capable of. Something like that. Have you heard it?
Yeah.
And it's like, and it's true. I think if there can be some kind of unity in a sales organization where you're right, it's much more than just sales. Like, yes, go do hard things in your industry. Go do hard things on the doors. Go do hard things. Go break records that's never been broken, but also carry that same level of passion externally, whether it be something in the community or Spartan race or a marathon, or like, yo, let's just freaking get a 6-pack, you know, like that, man, that fosters such deep connections in building a team that is really hard to separate. And again, I don't know if you've noticed that you've done that, but I've just from my observation, like, you've done that really well. So as we come to a close, because it's crazy, we've already been speaking for about 40 minutes, which is insane. Time just flies. What are some closing thoughts you have for, like, one thing I love about you is I would say you're an expert in leadership. And so what would you say are some closing thoughts you have for people that are listening to this and, they're maybe new in leadership, or maybe they don't have the results that they want yet. Like right now, you lead a large region, right? You have, I don't know, 150, 200 or so people under your care. But also over the years, you've mentored many. And so what would you say, what's some great advice you give somebody that wants to step into your shoes?
First, I think you've got to make sure that you have a big vision of what you want to accomplish in your life. I think you've got to have a massive vision that can captivate people around you. You've got to have a goal and something that you're driving towards all the time, because people can get behind that, and make sure that you're conveying that message to your people a lot. I think another thing is always be hungry, like stay humble, stay hungry. I think that's super true in this business, because there's a lot of leaders that just kind of rest on their laurels. They rest on the accolades that they've accomplished, on the achievements that they have, the honors that they've had. But if you don't continue to progress and get better at this job and in leadership and at life, you're actually going backwards, and it's a work in progress every day. There's been times where I've reached this plateau and I feel like I'm satisfied. And those are actually my darkest times, is when I feel like there's this target that I want to hit, and then I hit it, and then I'm like, cool, I've made it. And then I realized that that's not actually what I was after in the first place. Like, I was actually after the pursuit of that thing. Once you have it, it's a marginal gain, and you'll realize after a while it's not fulfilling. The pursuit is where we really start feeling like we're alive, and we start living outside of that comfort zone. And so it's just making sure that you have something grand that you want to get to. And that journey along the way is why we're here. That's why we do it together. Like, you can't do it alone. And I want to have a lot of strong leaders around me, and they uplift me as I uplift them. But it's something, the more strong leaders that I have, the faster we're going to get there, and the further we'll end up going. And so that's kind of like closing remarks. I mean, I feel like that's what we're doing here at Legacy. That's what we're doing in the Valor division, and with you leading the reins. But yeah, dude, I appreciate it.
Dang, you held out the best for last, dude. Man, this is where the gold is at, the last 10 minutes. So, dude, Dane, it's been awesome having you here, man. Just thank you for who you are. I've learned so much from you. There's a saying that goes, more is caught than taught. And so I've just learned a lot from you, just from watching you and observing you. You even said it earlier today about your children. Like, your children, they don't do what you say, they do what you do. And I've learned a lot from just how you lead and what you do, and not so much what you say, although I learned there too. But you're such a great leader. Dude, where can people find you? If people want to connect with you, if they want to know more about Dane Vikander, what's the best way they can contact you?
Just call me. Just kidding.
Hey, dude, Mike gives out his numbers on these podcasts, and he actually gets people to text him, literally. So it's actually not a bad idea.
Yeah.
But if that woman that you rented from sees this, like years ago with the whole
Turkey-on.
Yeah. I don't know.
I think she's still looking for me. You got to get on Instagram, DaneTrain2581. You can find me in the Corona office, our Avalon office there in Corona. You got to find us at Legacy. I mean, everything that's happening at Legacy in our business is next level, and the trajectory that we're on right now and the success that people are having, I mean, is tremendous. So, you got to, reach out. If you need me, I'm here to support you. I want you to win. Let's go dominate 2025 together. We've got to do it. And thank you for having me on, dude. I really appreciate you.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on, Dane.
Let's go.